So now I would like to introduce Dean Howard Kaufold, Vice Dean of the MBA program and Adjunct Professor of Finance at Wharton, to give us a welcome note on behalf of Penn and Wharton. Dr. Kaufold earned his bachelor's in economics from Wharton and completed his PhD in economics at Princeton University. His published papers have dealt with valuing leveraged buyouts and recapitalizations, hedging interest rate and exchange rate risk of foreign bonds, and the interest rate risk of floating rate notes. Dean Howie, as we all call him, has taught in executive education programs for corporations such as DuPont, General Electric, Merck, and Nomura, and has taught corporate finance in Wharton's MBA course since 1983. And he has twice been awarded the Wharton's Annual Award for Distinguished Teaching. So I welcome Dean Howie.
Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody, just to echo what Vivek has said, to welcome everybody to the Blockchain Conference, the second annual. On behalf of not just Wharton, but Penn, I'm very much ensconced in Wharton School. But as you know, this blockchain activity encompasses many other parts of the university as well as Wharton. But in particular, I really want to express my gratitude well, first of all, to all of you who are going to be presenting or moderating panels, presenting, keynote speaking, etc., for sharing your knowledge. But a special thanks to the Penn Blockchain Club and Vivek and Akshit and many of the others who are active in organizing this conference. I will say that we at Wharton are very proud of the fact that we are sometimes behind our student body as to what is a topic of great interest to people in our community. And this is a prime example of that. Last year, I remember very, very specifically, when the first blockchain conference came around, really there were a number of faculty who did not even know that a conference was yet occurring, much less knew much about what blockchain was. We really actually take pride, I would say Dean Garrett, myself, others here at the school, take pride in the fact, and by the way, I would say this more broadly for Penn, at setting up an ecosystem where the student interest can be sufficient to create an institution like this. And here we are at the second annual conference. I'm sure there'll be many more of it. And what has been borne out is just how fundamental a change blockchain is, not just in business, but across many, many fields that we're learning about. What I wanted to say, just a few words about, and then I want to sit here and drink up what is going to happen in many of these panels today. But just briefly, I wanted to say how Penn and Wharton are trying to catch up, I would say, to the student interest that has risen over the last few years in this area. The first thing I wanted to mention was, and call out a particular individual within Wharton, Professor Kevin Warbach. I would say if there's anybody within Wharton who's probably done more than anybody else to try to focus this interest and call all of our attentions to it, it's Professor Warbach, who is out of town today, could not be here. But I know, I've heard from many students just how central a role he has played. He is in our legal studies department. His whole career has been about emerging technologies. He's also has worked as a regulator, spent some of his career at the Federal Communications Commission. So the technologies he's focused on have evolved over time, but that naturally led him then to blockchain and cryptocurrencies, et cetera. He convenes a group of regulators here at Penn twice a year, and that has become one of the centers of gravity for our work in that area. But I've also wanted to mention some other places within Wharton, and then just a couple of brief mentions about things that are going on outside of Wharton and at Penn. But specifically, how many of you are actually students here at Penn? Okay, quite a few. So this will be of particular interest to you, but also for those of you who are here who are practitioners, perhaps academics. Hopefully we can engage all of you in the activities that are going on in several new or newly energized centers here at Wharton. So the first one I want to mention is something called the Harris Program for Alternative Investments. Some of you will already be aware of it. It's been a program within the finance department, particularly focused historically on private equity, on hedge funds, activism, etc. But they have launched a new blockchain venture. And that blockchain venture is an attempt to really centralize some of the thinking. Obviously, in alternative investments, there's obviously an intersection between these worlds. And they are working on creating a working group, a research series on cryptocurrencies, crypto economics, and blockchain. And they're going to institute a new fireside chat series specifically on blockchain and cryptocurrency, which is to say, what we mean by that is bringing to campus experts in this area, practitioners, academics, regulators, to be interviewed, and you'll have a lot of opportunity to engage with people in this area. So definitely encourage people who are particularly on campus to sign up, get involved, subscribe to on the website for the Harris Program for Alternative Investments. There's also an active partnership going on with Penn Blockchain, and Sarah Hammer and others from the program are actively engaged here. The second one, the second center I wanted to call your attention to is something called the Stevens Center for Innovation in Finance. And literally, this was officially born this past week. And Ross Stevens is a Wharton alum who's very interested in particular on how information technology is changing the world of financial services and markets. And so the idea is basically this is going to be our FinTech Center, but obviously, again, a real intersection with this world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And I think basically they're interested in how technology is transforming the business models of financial services and the markets. So they're engaged in a number of activities. One of the things that I hope will be of interest to the group is much of new research is about diving into new data. And I know David Musto, who is the head of this new center, is very interested in gathering data about what's going on in the world of fintech and currencies and markets. So that will be, I think, fodder for a lot of good research to come out in this area. In both cases, the Harris Program and Stevens, the other two elements that I think will be of great interest to this group is they're very interested in developing new curricular materials. So new courses, you'll see new courses coming out on areas of interest, I think, to the students in the room and also to the practitioners, but also new research, and finally, new career opportunities. So they are going to be working hard to collect our connections in these worlds and to build the network that all of you can then take advantage of. The last couple of things I wanted to mention are here is Shaikat here today? I know he was going to Shaikat Chowdhury. Well, he's very active as managing director of the MAC Center, the MAC Institute, which more broadly is looking at the effects of blockchain on business practice. And they have put out some very interesting working papers. Encourage you, if you haven't seen those papers, to look at that area on MAC Institute's website as well. Finally, I know, and in fact Vivek mentioned, about people coming from outside of the US now. And I suspect that we'll see more and more of that as this conference matures. But we were particularly interested here at the school in making sure we were learning about who is leading this blockchain effort outside of the US. And in particular, we were just talking with Ron here about what's going on in China and where we can learn, both in terms of the technology and in terms of business practice, about what is happening in China. And I'm happy to see that there is in fact an entire session dedicated to developments in China, and I'm interested to hear what is said in that session as well. Last thing to mention, I don't have time to go into a lot of what's going on outside of Wharton, but I do want to mention specifically how, of course, blockchain is naturally an interdisciplinary activity, crossing across many boundaries. And within universities, that's not always easy to draw those connections and partnerships. But again, Professor Warbach with David Crosby has been actually delivering one of our earliest courses on cryptocurrencies, blockchain, etc. And so we're starting to see those partnerships form, and I think you'll see much more of that in the years to come. Last, I wanted to join Vivek in just thanking the sponsors to this conference. IBM, active sponsor. See also putting their people behind it in terms of exposing our students to this area. And a special shout out to Ripple, who has provided funding which has sourced a lot of faculty research. There are a number of faculty who are working in areas that are made possible by Ripple's financial generosity, but also student fellowships, and then of course gatherings such as this conference. So essentially, I suspect the administration will never catch up to all of you, and we hope you'll continue to lead the way in keeping us our noses pointed in the right direction for where we should be heading the school. But we want to say how actively we want to support you in what you're trying to do. So as I say, what I'd like to do now is stop talking and start listening. So thank you very much for being here, and welcome and enjoy the conference. Thank you.